Rick Harrison, the founder of the famous gold and silver pawn shop from the reality show Pawn Stars, was once a symbol of success in the pawn industry and reality television. However, his illustrious career took an unexpected turn following serious allegations and a prolonged legal investigation. While facing the greatest challenges and hardships of his life, Rick received unwavering support from the Harrison family and loyal fans who stood firmly by his side. Rick's story is not just a journey from fame to adversity, but also a powerful lesson about how quickly fate can change under the bright lights of stardom. If you're a fan of Frank Fritz and want to keep up with exciting updates about the mansion, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Some people have even called it a crime, although many fans believe the tension between the two pickers was simply a way to boost TV ratings. Wolf was taken into custody and faced serious charges related to a revenge killing fueled by jealousy and greed. However, social media reports indicate that the initial charges against Wolf were downgraded as investigators gathered more evidence. Another post revealed that Wolf was arrested after a crew member from American Pickers led him to Fritz's house following his death. The Iowa State Police conducted a thorough investigation and uncovered incriminating evidence, including Wolf's fingerprints on a pill bottle and suspicious text messages sent to Fritz, which led them to pursue first-degree murder charges. The investigation into Frank Fritz's death began when the medical examiner noticed inconsistencies in his toxicology report. The official cause of death was listed as complications from a stroke, but the autopsy results revealed dangerously high levels of prescription medication in his system, far exceeding what had been prescribed for his condition. This immediately raised red flags, especially since Fritz had been careful to follow his medication regimen during recovery. The Iowa State Police quietly launched an investigation, focusing on individuals who had access to Fritz in his final hours, and what they uncovered shocked even veteran officers. Security footage from Fritz's neighborhood showed Wolf's vehicle arriving at the house late at night, roughly 3 hours before emergency services were called. It was Wolf who dialed 911, claiming he had stopped by to check on his old friend and found him unresponsive. Paramedics found Fritz unresponsive, with no pulse, and all attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Initial reports suggested the cause was related to his previous stroke, but toxicology results told a different story. What especially raised investigators' suspicions was Wolf's behavior immediately following Fritz's death. Instead of mourning as one might expect, he quickly moved to assert control over Fritz's collection and intellectual property rights. Within 48 hours, Wolf had contacted Fritz's attorney about acquiring the rights to his name and likeness for future American Pickers merchandise. According to production staff testimonies, he also quickly moved to access Fritz's storage locations, which held valuable antiques that had never been featured on the show. Several crew members noted that Wolf seemed overly focused on business and showed little sign of grief when discussing commercial matters immediately following Fritz's death. When detectives searched Wolf's home and office, they discovered a hidden safe containing several unmarked pill bottles, which were later identified as the same type of medication found in Fritz's system. Most damning of all was a journal found in Wolf's travel bag, in which he had written extensively about his growing resentment toward Fritz. Some entries dated back several years and used increasingly hostile language. In one entry, just weeks before Fritz's death, he wrote, "F thinks he can come back and steal half the spotlight again. He forgets that without me, there wouldn't be a show." Throughout the 6-week trial, Wolf appeared stunned as he sat silently beside his attorneys while the prosecution laid out how he had methodically planned Fritz's murder. The jury heard evidence showing that he had researched untraceable poisons and ways to make a murder appear as a natural cause. His internet search history revealed queries such as, "Can drug interactions from a stroke be detected after death?" and "How to make someone's death look like stroke complications." The prosecution argued that Wolf exploited Fritz's prior health issues, using them as the perfect cover for murder. Former American Pickers crew members testified about disturbing changes in the relationship between Wolf and Fritz in the years leading up to Fritz's departure from the show and his eventual death. One production assistant testified that she overheard intense arguments about the future direction of the show, with Wolf demanding full creative control. He told Frank that, due to his health problems, he no longer deserved equal pay. The assistant testified that several witnesses described Wolf becoming increasingly controlling, often speaking negatively about Fritz to network executives and isolating him from longtime friends in the antiques community. Perhaps the most emotional testimony came from Danielle Kabie, who reluctantly testified for the prosecution, struggling to hold back tears. She described confronting Wolf about his behavior toward Fritz. "I noticed Mike had become obsessed with being the only face of American Pickers." She testified, "When I asked him about reconciling with Frank, he became defensive and angrily told me to stop interfering in things that weren't my business." KBY described finding concerning notes in Wolf's office regarding Fritz's medication schedule and questioning Wolf, who claimed he was just worried about Frank's health. The defense attorneys tried to paint a picture of a misunderstood friendship, suggesting that Wolf had genuinely tried to reconcile with Fritz before his death. They brought in network executives to testify about public statements supporting Fritz's recovery. However, this theory was severely undermined by testimony from Fritz's personal doctor, who stated that while Fritz was concerned about his health, he remained optimistic about his recovery and had plans to start his own antique business. The doctor also confirmed that he had never prescribed the types of medications found in Fritz's system, especially not at such high doses. During cross-examination, Wolf's carefully maintained calm began to break down when directly asked if he had given Fritz the drugs. He snapped at the prosecutor, "You don't understand what it's like to build something from nothing and watch someone else take the credit while everyone thinks he was just as important to the success of the show." His outburst led his defense team to request a recess, but the damage had already been done. The jury later reported that this moment was crucial in their deliberations, as it revealed the anger Wolf had been harboring for years after Fritz left the show. The financial motive became clear when forensic accountants testified about suspicious changes in Wolf's business structure in the months leading up to Fritz's death. Wolf had quietly restructured his companies to take control of Fritz's intellectual property in the event that he became incapacitated or passed away. He had also purchased a business insurance policy for Fritz, making his company the beneficiary of a $5 million payout. In addition, prosecutors revealed that Wolf had set up several shell companies that Fritz was unaware of and had transferred valuable antiques into these entities, with a total worth exceeding $2 million. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict, and the judge sentenced the defendant to life in prison without the possibility of parole. That was when everything completely unraveled. Wolf, who had maintained a calm demeanor throughout the trial, suddenly leapt up, shouting, "You don't understand! He was going to destroy everything! He was going to destroy my legacy!" He charged across the defense table, knocking papers and water cups flying. The bailiffs rushed toward him, but he charged at Fritz's family, swinging his arms wildly before they could subdue him. The courtroom erupted in chaos as people screamed and pushed toward the exits while Wolf broke free again. This time, he grabbed an antique walking cane, which had been entered as evidence, and swung it like a weapon. He struck one of the bailiffs in the shoulder. "I built the American lifts. That's my life's work," he shouted as 3 other officers struggled to restrain him. He fell to the ground, and the judge was escorted out of the courtroom while Wolf continued to resist fiercely, kicking and shouting about betrayal as the officers tried to control him. Fritz's sister, who was present at the sentencing, had to be escorted out by security as Wolf tried to charge toward her. "I deserve this," he yelled. "It was my show," as they finally handcuffed him. The most shocking moment occurred when Wolf stared at Danielle Colby, who was sitting in the gallery, and shouted, "Tell them the truth. Tell them what Frank was really like." Colby turned away with an unmistakable look of anguish, while other crew members began to cry. The American Pickers family had been torn apart by the trial, with some supporting Wolf, while others testified for the prosecution. Court documents revealed that Wolf had been turning members of the crew against Fritz in the years leading up to his death, creating a deep rift within the production team that may never be repaired. As security struggled to control Wolf, he continued his outbursts, revealing even more shocking details. "He was going to start his own show," he yelled. "He told me I was outdated and the network wanted him back." Journalists in the courtroom described the scene as surreal, with at least 3 people injured, including Wolf's defense attorney, who was hit by a flying water bottle. Even as they dragged him out of the courtroom, he continued shouting about betrayal and his legacy, claiming that Fritz had plotted to ruin him. Legal experts later commented that his outburst had destroyed any chance of a successful appeal, as it contradicted his defense team's argument that he was a misunderstood businessman incapable of using violence. Following the courtroom incident, former friends and colleagues of Wolf shared stories that further shed light on his character. Former American Pickers producer Thomas Reynolds described instances where Wolf would fly into rages backstage when things didn't go his way. "He kept up the perfect down-to-earth image in front of the cameras," Reynolds said. "But off-camera, he could become terrifying, especially to the lower-level staff. When the cameras stopped rolling, his entire demeanor would change." Others described him becoming increasingly paranoid in recent years, believing that Fritz was secretly plotting a return to television with a competing show. The case sent shockwaves through the reality TV community. American Pickers, which had reached millions of viewers worldwide, now faced an uncertain future. The History Channel canceled all episodes featuring Wolf and issued a statement expressing shock and sympathy for the Fritz family. Several major sponsors pulled their support, and the future of the show remained uncertain. The Fritz family filed a lawsuit to gain control of his antique collection and intellectual property, promising to honor his legacy while pursuing legal action against the network for allowing Wolf's increasingly erratic behavior. Mental health experts analyzed the case, suggesting that Wolf may have developed a more severe narcissistic personality disorder after years of being in the spotlight. Dr. Robert Keller, a forensic psychologist who had been following the trial, explained, "While this doesn't excuse his actions, it helps explain the discrepancy between his public persona and his private behavior. Narcissistic individuals can appear charming and calm while harboring deep resentment and plotting revenge." Fritz's departure from the show would have been a lasting narcissistic injury for Wolf, one that could fester for years. Perhaps the most concerning aspect was how Wolf used his platform as a television personality to manipulate the public's perception. In the weeks following Fritz's death, he took to social media in tears, attributing his passing to complications from a stroke, and seized the opportunity to promote special merchandise in memory of Fritz. "This isn't just a murder," prosecutor Sarah Donovan stated in her closing argument. "This is a calculated deception of millions of viewers who trusted him, who mourned alongside a man who killed his former partner." Investigators discovered that over $1 million had been donated in the weeks following Fritz's death, with most of the funds transferred into accounts that only Wolf had access to. As Mike Wolf began serving his life sentence, viewers and former supporters were left to reconcile the public image of a passionate antiques collector with the reality of a man capable of murder and violence in court. Many people expressed feeling betrayed not only by Wolf's actions, but also by years of deception, said longtime American Pickers viewer Robert Jenkins. "We trusted his down-to-earth charm and passion for preservation, only to find out it was all a facade that was unraveling." Television personalities who once appeared alongside Wolf distanced themselves from him, issuing statements of shock and calling for respect for Fritz's memory. For the American Pickers crew, the tragedy continued. Their testimonies in the trial revealed a deeply divided production process, with some believing in Wolf's innocence, while others were convinced of his guilt. Danielle Cabey, who testified for the prosecution, took a leave of absence from television, citing the need to heal and reflect. In a brief statement, she requested privacy and expressed hope that the legacy of antique preservation, which originally brought them all together, could somehow continue despite these tragic circumstances. Other crew members largely remained out of the public eye as they struggled with the double trauma of losing Fritz and witnessing Wolf being convicted of murder. The judge's final remarks before Wolf erupted in fury seemed especially prophetic. "Now, Mr. Wolf," he said, "you presented yourself as a champion of history and preservation in the United States, all while harboring thoughts of revenge and murder. You used your platform to preach the values of the past while planning the death of the man who helped build that very foundation. Justice is being served, not only for Frank Fritz, but for the millions of viewers who trusted him." At that moment, Wolf lunged across the table, starting a violent outburst that would become his final public appearance before being taken away to spend the rest of his life behind bars. "Tell me to do something for God and country, and then go back and do it. That's a good thing," he shouted. "Right there, I'll take it from you." This was shocking news for Pawn Stars fans when rumors began circulating that Richard Kevin Harrison, better known as Rick Harrison, had been sentenced to life in prison. If this story has sparked your curiosity, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to share with your friends and family so you can explore these surprising stories together. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Rick, known for his straightforward approach to business and his vast knowledge on the show, suddenly found himself facing serious legal trouble, something no one had anticipated for years. Pawn Stars had entertained viewers by showcasing the fascinating world of pawn shops, tough negotiations, and the daily drama inside Rick Harrison's famous pawn shop in Las Vegas. However, Rick's growing television career took an unexpected and dark turn. But what exactly did he do to deserve such a harsh punishment? Stay with us as we dive into what led to this major turning point in Rick's life and the shocking details of this case. Richard Kevin Harrison, a famous American entrepreneur and television personality, was born on March 22, 1965, in Lexington, North Carolina. When he was just 2 years old, he moved to San Diego, California with his family, where he spent most of his childhood. As a young boy, Rick was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 8, which led him to spend much of his childhood reading books, contributing to the impressive historical knowledge that would later benefit his career. Rick's childhood wasn't easy. His battle with epilepsy meant he frequently missed school and eventually dropped out in his sophomore year of high school. However, this setback did not diminish his ambition or thirst for knowledge. Instead, he devoted himself to self-education, voraciously reading books on a variety of subjects, particularly history and business. This self-taught approach later became evident in his encyclopedic knowledge displayed on Pawn Stars. During his teenage years, Rick began working alongside his father on various business projects. He developed a keen eye for value and authentication skills that would prove invaluable in his future career. At the age of 17, Rick's girlfriend, Kim, became pregnant, prompting them to get married. The young couple eventually had 2 sons, Corey and Adam, before divorcing after 8 years of marriage. In 1981, Rick's family moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, where his father, Richard Benjamin Harrison, known as the Old Man, opened the gold and silver pawn shop. This shop would later become the setting for Pawn Stars decades later. The transition from a coin shop to a pawn shop was a strategic move, as the Harrisons recognized the higher profit potential in the pawn business. The early years were challenging as Rick and his father worked long hours to build their reputation in Las Vegas. Rick often found himself dealing with difficult customers in situations that were sometimes dangerous. These experiences honed and sharpened his negotiating skills. By the early 2000s, Rick had become well known in Las Vegas for his expertise in various collectibles and historical items. The pawn shop had gained a reputation as a place where unique and valuable items could be found, attracting both locals and tourists. Recognizing the entertainment potential of his business, Rick began to propose the idea of a reality television show based on the daily operations of the pawn shop. After years of rejections and persistent efforts, Rick finally struck a deal with the History Channel. In 2009, Pawn Stars began airing, following the daily operations of the gold and silver pawn shop. The show featured Rick, his son Corey, his father Richard Old Man Harrison, and their friend Austin Chumley Russell as they appraised items bought and sold, often with historical significance and questionable value. The show became an instant hit, turning Rick from a local pawn shop owner into a television star. His catchphrases, straightforward manner, and extensive knowledge of historical artifacts made him a fan favorite. Rick's signature line, "The best I can do is," became iconic as he negotiated with customers looking to sell their treasures. What set Pawn Stars apart from other reality TV